Hey, what's going on, everybody? Nobody Famous here again, back with another beatdown video here in Ableton for Maschine Masters. Thanks for everyone who checked it out. If you have any questions or anything, or like to see anything in future videos, feel free to hit me up on Twitter at NobodyFamous, and I'll get back to you, and I'll include it in upcoming videos and things like that. So for this episode, I want to kind of go over a couple of different things, just techniques that I use as far as warping samples, and then using basically the simpler and then chopping samples up like basically like an MPC as well to use in my production. So I'm gonna kind of show you what I have here. First, I used Janet Jackson, "I Get So Lonely" as a sample here, kind of slowed it down, pitched it down, and then kind of made another beat out of it. So this is what it sounds like real quick, and then I'll show you how I got that sound. Alright, so that's what the beat sounds like, and I'm going to show you kind of the different sections that I have and then how I built off of that. So if you're familiar with the song kind of starts off like this. And I actually didn't use that part. I was originally going to use it, but just to kind of show you some warping here in Ableton, what you do is you can select like a 4-bar loop, whatever you want to select, and then you can see your warp markers. You got your 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4 across the grid, counting your time here. So what you can do is if something's off, you can take it and just snap it to the grid right here. So you make sure everything snaps. So that way, if you chop it up and you play it on the keys or on the pad, you can do that. So this is the section I actually used for the beat, so I'll show you what it sounds like.
Gonna break it down, break it down, break it down. Gonna break it down, break it down, break it down.
Okay, so the first thing I did is I found the first hit on that I wanted to use was just right here. So I placed a warp marker there. Like it didn't have one there, I placed it there. And most beats, honestly, in Ableton now, the algorithms are pretty good, so it's gonna match it up exactly on the beat for the most part. But sometimes you're gonna have to kind of go in and tweak it. So there's a couple things that you can do. You can first try by control and clicking right here, and then you can warp from here. You can do it at the tempo, you can do it from straight. Then there's like a warp, a 64-bar loop, and warp and these different sections. What I usually do is I do it from here at 60 or whatever. That would be whatever your tempo is. So I'll just do it to my tempo. And you can see it kind of tightens up a little bit. And usually that will do the trick. And then you can kind of go in and be like, okay, I want a warp marker here. I want a warp marker here, or whatever. And if you need to like drag something over and make sure that it's tightened up and like that. So now that I have a tight 4-bar loop, and kind of remember the warp markers for later as well, because what you can do with the warp markers is you can set that for a chop. And there's MPC presets that you can use, and you can like download them and just drop them in Ableton, and I'll show you what it looks like. Or you can just kind of run through the tutorial and build it out yourself, and then you can like tweak it on how you want it, because basically you can slice from a warp marker, and each one of these warp markers would be like a hit. So that's my loop that I'm going to use. But what I wanted to do is I wanted to pitch it down. So what I do is I create a new MIDI track, and I have a simpler in there, and I basically take this clip that I just warped for that 4-bar loop, and I drag it into the simpler. So now you can see down here, that is where my that loop is. It's already selected, it's already highlighted for what I'm going to use. Now I can turn on so these are I can play it at different, pitch it up or down on my pads or my keyboard or whatever. This is what it sounds like normal. And then this is where I used it for the beat. So what I do basically is I'm going to record just that one note and hold that note down for the length of the bar. So basically I'll do this.
down, break it down, break it down, and I break it down, break it down, break it down.
Okay, so now if I have that clip, it's just that whole note held out. Now, if you remember at the beginning when I looped this section, it was a 4-bar loop, but you could tell since it's pitched down that it's longer. It doesn't end right here at the end of 4 bars on the 5. It actually extends past that. So what you have to do now is you're going to have to freeze it, turn it into and flatten it, turn it into audio, and then after you do that, what you can do is rewarp it and basically make it 4 bars. So it'll be pitched down, but it will still be at the tempo. So what you do, you control click and you freeze track, and it will freeze it. And then you do it again, and then you have flatten. So once you flatten it, you see here that you have a 4-bar loop. I mean, the loop is still past 4 bars, but you have the audio. Excuse me. So I like to use Complex Pro, and then what you can do, set your warp marker at 4 bars. You can zoom in, and you know since it's a 4-bar loop, you can go right here to the end where it goes past, and you can drag it back. So now you see most of it is on beat at the beginning, and then you see how it starts to drag a little bit. If you look close to the grid, it gets off. So what you can do is start putting warp markers in, and you drag that one back. That one looks pretty good, and it'll just tighten it up to the grid because you want everything on the grid. So I'm going through, making sure everything's there. Everything's on the grid. Cool. So then I'll show you what that sounds like. So I took this loop that was basically about 5.5, almost 6 measures long, and I rewarped it back to 4 bars after I pitched it down into simpler. So next thing what I'll do is I'll click on the clip, control click, and then there's an option for slice the MIDI track. Now what I'm going to do for this one, I'm going to use quarter notes, and then I have an MPC preset set up. And this, what you can do if you Google it and or go to YouTube and just look it up, there's a really good tutorial about how to use the drum rack like an MPC, and you just go through. It takes about 10 minutes to do, so you can kind of get an understanding of setting up like your own racks and everything like that. But then once that preset's there, you can always chop it like that. And basically the main feature for this is like when you play one note and then you play another note, it will choke the chop off that was before that. So I'll select that preset and I'll click OK. So I'm just going to give me 16 chops. And then make sure that's one. So now I have my different chops. So what I can do is I'll just show you kind of how I did it on here, because I already have my some processing on here and stuff, some EQ, compressor, and all that kind of stuff. So what this part sounds like, chopped down, it's like this. Break it down, 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 break it down. So that was my main section that I used, my main chops, and then I took a different section of it. I basically did the exact same thing, but the only difference I did with here is that I actually reversed it. So if I turn the reverse off, this is what the section sounds like. So basically, I put the reverse on, and what that's going to do is going to play each one of these slices reversed, and I'll use just this one little section. Actually, this one, sorry. So played out, you can see the chops right here. Sounds like this. Okay, so now that we have all of that, I'm going to show you how I built out the beat around that. So basically, this is what the beat sounds like. I mean, looks like, all arranged out and everything. And like I said, I usually start here. I'll get my different sections that I want. You know, verse, chorus, pre-chorus. You know, different parts of the verses, things like that. And then I'll arrange it in here. And then I'll come down to add like sound effects and things like that. So I'm gonna mute all these. I'm gonna start with the break it down. Break it down, break it down, break it down. So that's pretty much what I started. I figured out what key it was in, and then it's basically just simple, since it's simple chops and it doesn't use a big section of that 4-bar loop. It's just basically 2 notes. So I added some thick pads behind there. So break it down, 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 break it down. And then like for this section right here with those reverse vocals. And then basically what I did is I started to add, you know, my different percussions and drums and stuff. So we have our kick, we have our snap, hi-hats. And then basically some other pads on top of that, all playing the same thing. Sometimes you can add different movements and different textures and layers over it, just to make it a little bit more interesting. If it's not a huge, you know, chord progression going to a lot of different notes. So this pad sounds like this. This pad sounds like this. And basically they're just adding a little movement and more texture to it. Also have this one. Then I have the sound effect. And then basically after that, that's the main sections of the beat. You know, using different parts at different times. I have some sound effects. So for instance, I have like these 2 bangs. And what I did here, I basically just duplicated it, reversed it, so it has a swell sound. Actually, it's probably best if I show you right here, because I have an effect, and I'll show you what effect I use on here, but it sounds like this. Okay. And the reason why it sounded like that right here is because on the master track, I have what's called a fade to gray. So if I open up the master track here, the fade to gray, and it's basically, it comes stock in Ableton, but it's a bunch of different delays, filter delays and ping pong delays and stuff, kind of stacked on top of each other. So I like using it. So what it sounds like is this, when something's playing, it'll like fade it out. Break it down. And that's pretty much it. Just a straightforward kind of R&B type beat. Of course, you can always add more to it, but I kind of like to wait and see what like a vocalist does on it, and then I'll kind of build more around it if I want to build more around it. Or sometimes I'll just keep it more simple. But that's the basics of using this simpler in a creative way to kind of like create some cool pitch down vocals, and then you can like chop them up with that MPC preset, and then just warp your you warp it how you want it, add your warp markers, and you can chop it up by either the warp markers or quarter notes, eighth notes, or however you want to do it, and then you can like lay out your chops and then build a beat around that. This just happened to be one of my favorite Janet Jackson songs, so I was listening to it one day and decided to sample it, and that's what came of it. So again, this is Nobody Famous. If you have any questions or comments or anything like that, hit me up at NobodyFamous, and I'll include anything in future videos. And shout out to Maschine Masters, and stay tuned for the next episode. Peace.